Welcome back to the great outdoors. It is 65 and beautiful right now. The birds are chirping, and it's time to talk about Owl City, more specifically the album Coco Moon. Coco Moon is the latest Owl City album. The man has a very large discography, but it has been a full freaking 5 years since Cinematic, Owl City's latest disaster, an album that was completely lost in extremely personal storytelling that was at once extremely specific and so freaking vague. It the appeal of the songwriting of that album, and by the way, also just extremely plain stated. Like, it was almost like he was talk singing. Like, there's the singing on the album is feels very minimal because he's just telling these stories without all this creative and imagery, without the creative imagery of, like, that he built his music on, that he built his career on. That is all just gone in the album Cinematic. It's like he just forgot what Owl City is. Before that, I think he was even more creatively lost with the album Mobile Orchestra, and even before that, his pop album Midsummer Station. These three albums really sound nothing like the Owl City of Maybe I'm Dreaming, the Owl City of June, the Owl City of Ocean Eyes and All Things Bright and Beautiful, which is the Owl City that I and all of his fans absolutely love. Don't get me wrong, some people do like some of his pop stuff, but I think any real Owl City fan knows that that's not the good stuff. The good stuff is freaking Fireflies, Cave In, Hello Seattle, Vanilla Twilight. With that preamble aside, I think Coco Moon is the most Owl City project we've gotten since All Things Bright and Beautiful. And that, above all things, is obviously a huge compliment. Now that I said something nice, it's time to tear this album apart. And I think the only effective way to review this album, this 55-minute album with 11 tracks, is to just kind of dissect specific tracks, because what you can say about one track in terms of the compliments and in terms of the insults really can be applied to the entire album regardless of the quality of the track. So let's just hop into it. Let's talk about some of the nitty-gritty of this album by talking about some specific highlights and lowlights. One of my favorite tracks on the album, and it might actually be my favorite song on the album, is The Tornado, which is basically a fable in which Owl City recounts the story of being, and this might be a completely fictional story, it probably is, of surviving a tornado that basically decimated everything around him. It was really terrifying, and he actually uses the music and his vocals in the song to tell the story, which is something that is sorely missed on a lot of the rest of the album. Right before the tornado hits, Owl City's voice gets very agitated, the keys start speeding up, the strings start getting very dramatic. He's done some film scores. Adam Young has made some film scores. It's a bit reminiscent of that, and him translating those terrific film scores into fictional film scores, like not for non-existent films. It's an interesting project. Check it out under Adam Young's name. Sidetracked. But he kind of does that on this song. And it's, the music actually elevates the story and the narrative. And you could say that the fable, like the message of the story, is a little bit corny. But trust me, this is one of the more well-communicated messages. The other fables or morals or messages on the album are way more blunt and uncomfortable. Dinosaur Park is the other highlight on this album for me. Just that the hook is, like, decently good, and the song actually builds. Like, the song actually gets better as it goes on because he's adding more things to the hook. The song is pretty long, and it really is a case of whatever the opposite of diminishing returns is, strengthening returns. Like, the hook just keeps getting better as it goes on, and you kind of get to this point where you're anticipating the hook, even though lyrically it's just an extremely neutered version of the song Angels, this song where he's reveling in this kind of imagination of something being real. In this case, a real park in River City in South Dakota. I think is Rapid City, I think. I don't remember. I don't know the actual location that he's talking about, but it's a place that he cares about. And he kind of imagines the dinosaurs, these stone statues of dinosaurs coming alive at nighttime. So it's kind of like the song Angels, if you know that song. But, like, lyrically, it's not as good, and the song is still kind of not amazing. It's just one of the better songs on the album. There's a really terrible song on this album called Field Notes, and it's terrible because the song is 100% a narrative. The song is a fable, and it is the most dull and uninteresting story on the entire planet. It's like Owl City or this character just runs into a field and they find a chest. And the way he hypes up this chest, the way he suggests finding the treasure is just so freaking cringy and so awkward. And I'm like, the man just forgot how to tell a story, and this is one of those songs where the whole thing is just a story, and then at the end is just a very heavy-handed fable. But after the narrative twist of the song is revealed, that the chest that he finds in the field is basically him finding God and finding his faith, the second half of the song, or everything after that point, is just him very, just no subtlety, just saying the same thing over and over and over again, to the point where at the end of the song he says, it's a fable. It's so we all know that it's a metaphor, that he's not being literal by the end when he literally explains what it is, but then he continues to explain it and says, it's a fable, you see, and the moral is this. He's just being so repetitive. Your heart's with your treasure wherever it is, and trust me, when you dig, your treasure will be revealed, and you never know what could be buried in the middle of a field. And it's like, this is horrible. This is just, it's the cringiest. The song is 5.5 minutes long, and it just goes nowhere. It is so uninteresting. If you're going to write a song like this, it's hard to make a song that is just, it's pretty rare, like a song that's just a story. Like, it's literally just a story. And he's like barely even singing the song. It barely, I don't think it even has a hook. And it just goes nowhere. It's just a meandering mess. And there's nothing poetic about it. There's nothing beautiful about it, because it is so blunt lyrically. The song Vitamin C is the dadification of Owl City incarnated in one song. It is literally just him making a bunch of puns in a song that is simply about how much he loves the beach, and how much he loves the sea, and how much he loves being on vacation. It's that vacation's never gonna end. And it feels almost as pandering as the song Verge, which was this really insanely commercial song with Owl Black that Owl City made on Mobile Orchestra that was just supposed to be this anthem for people who are graduating high school or college. That's the entire point of the song. And this song, the entire thing literally is just about how much he loves being on vacation. And it just feels so pandering to the lowest common denominator. Like, cool, dude, you like the beach. And the very worst line on the album, is when he says, I've gone coastal. It's so unfortunate. In fact, that entire bridge is really bad. Like, the line right after that, one of the other absolute worst lines on the album, because when I feel a bit blue, I head for Honolulu, and I am happy as a clam. And sitting on a beach is cheaper than therapy. That's not a horrible line, but it kind of is, though. And that's another thing about the album. The album is 55 minutes long with only 11 tracks. The songs are pretty freaking long. Like, he goes on, and I don't think the length of the songs is ever that helpful. It almost never feels necessary. The reason why the songs have this length is because a lot of the songs do have a story. But like I talked about with Field Notes, the stories don't really go anywhere. Like, there's not usually a justification for the stories and the fables being as long as they are. The other songs just kind of have multiple parts to them, and not in an interesting way, just in a long, drawn-out, unnecessarily so kind of way. Except for Dinosaur Park, which works for me just because I think the song just keeps getting better, and that repeats the hook a bunch of times, but I think the hook is actually pretty decent, especially musically. That was a lot of negative things, but what I can say genuinely is I think musically, and this is what I said earlier, and I'm getting back to this because I didn't elaborate on it, musically I think this is the most solid thing that he's done since 2011 with All Things Bright and Beautiful in terms of staying true to his sound. He's doing this creative, weird electronic music, a lot of strings, a lot of drums. It really does feel like we're getting back to All Things Bright and Beautiful in terms of Owl City's headspace musically, because after that album he really just made pop music, and then he made Cinematic, which had hints of it but was pretty bad musically. It's a pretty misguided, and it just sounded so sloppy, and lyrically that album and vocally is just really bad. But this album is I feel like he really is production wise kind of getting back in his bag, which I'm very happy to see. And this album actually does sound decent enough if you turn your brain off and you are not listening to the words and you are not listening to his vocals, which are more distracting even than the words, because his singing is like it's gone downhill. His voice is it's lost the magic. I could keep going. There's a lot of songs in this album that I have not addressed, but I really don't think it's worth doing because what I have said about these four tracks, the Tornado, Dinosaur Park, Vitamin C, and Field Notes, those comments extend to the entire album. Those complaints I had and the positives extend to the entire album, but I can safely say that more of the tracks fall in line with Vitamin C and Field Notes than they fall in line with the better songs on the album. And it's not very listenable. Outside of the music, it's hard to ignore how cringe and bad the storytelling and the lyrics are on this album. It's hard to ignore how mediocre and awkward the vocals and the singing is on this album, and I'm just going to have to give it a 2.5 star rating out of 5. It's so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate because I wanted to love this album. I do love Owl City. I think he's an amazing person from all the interviews and stuff. Like, I love the Adam Young projects, the hypothetical movie soundtracks. Before I head out, I want to hear your thoughts on the album because I know some people like this one. Some people like this one, and I fully can see why you would like this musically, but lyrically, I think he has lost the boat. He has missed the train. I mixed up some lines there, but you know what I'm saying. Final thing I want to say: the song "My Muse." I think it's a boring song. I think it's short, which is nice. It doesn't waste time, and I don't think it's bad in any way. It's one of the least offensive songs on the album because lyrically I just think it's fine. Musically I think it's fine. It's a song that I just don't feel much about. I just feel like addressing that because it is the closer, and I'm guessing this is going to be a song that is supposed to be very important, I feel like, to him, and probably to some fans will really resonate with this one maybe because of the importance it probably holds to the artist, but that song is just so meh, and that's how I feel about the album. Thanks for watching the video. Have a great rest of your day.